Hello and welcome everyone to Star Talk All-Stars. I'm your all-star host of the evening, Carolyn Porco. I'm a planetary scientist, which means I love planets. I'm the leader of the imaging science team on the Cassini mission, presently in orbit around Saturn, and a veteran imaging scientist of that fabled mission Voyager to the outer solar system in the 1980s. Joining me as my comedic co-host is Star Talk veteran, the very funny Chuck Nice.
That remains to be seen. Yes.
Thanks for being here today.
Not so nice.
Last time we did this, you were such a champ. You came here and did 2 shows, and you had a cold and the flu.
Yes, I had the flu.
And you're okay today.
You know what? I'm not contagious. Okay. So we are in much better position.
Okay, because today we have a very special guest with us, and that is Sean Ono Lennon. Welcome, Sean. Hello.
Howdy, good to be here.
You are here.
Thanks for having me. I made it.
You made it.
In the humidity.
As I like to say, if you were alive and alert during the 1960s, and it would be forgivable if you weren't either, you will certainly recognize Sean's last 2 names. Yes, he is the son of John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and I know what you're all thinking, but that is not why I invited him here today. He is, of course, a musician and has been for decades, right? That's correct. He's just completed a tour with his new band called the Claypool Lennon Delirium, which is fronted by both Sean and Les Claypool. Most people will know Les as the lead guy in
Primus, right?
Primus.
Primus, yeah.
Referred to on Wikipedia, I'm sorry I had to do this, as a funk metal band. Is that an accurate description?
You know, it's good enough for now.
Okay.
Wait around 10 minutes, it'll change.
Yeah.
But actually, none of that is why Sean is here today. He's here because I noticed, as I followed him on Twitter, that he's a serious, I called him badass, science groupie. He pays attention to what's going on in all sorts of arenas like planetary exploration and cosmology, artificial intelligence, technology, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and on it goes. He even wears glasses. That makes him official.
And there's no prescription in them.
Yeah.
It's just for effect.
It's
just for effect.
I know. Well, looking this good isn't that easy. It takes a while.
And I found he was enamored with Saturn, which was cool by me. And in fact, when he was a teenager, he painted a painting of Saturn that he recently sent me, which I think was adorable. And through all of this in the last few months and lots of email exchanges and discussions, I found him to have a really incisive intelligence, a gentle soul, and he's a staunch feminist to boot. So I thought he'd be perfect to have on Star Talk.
Thank you.
Anyway, it's a delight to have you.
I'm really excited to be here, guys.
Okay.
I'm excited to have you.
Okay, so there's so much we could talk about, but I wanted to begin with this. Since you are a science groupie, what is it about science that draws you to it? You didn't become a scientist, although you told me you spent some time at Columbia. You actually went through 3 semesters at Columbia.
Well, at one point I was interested in anthropology at Columbia, but then I kind of got distracted by a record deal and all this, and I'm not sure if I regret it, but I just left and went to do music, and I've been doing that ever since.
I had a similar experience where I went to Columbia and they said, listen, you can't just be on campus. You actually have to go here. And then I had to leave.
Yeah.
Oh, gee, you didn't know that was part of the contract.
Yeah, I'm just like, what a cool campus.
Okay.
Why didn't I go into science? Well,
because
I think when I was young, I was in a boarding school. It was kind of a strict British boarding school, and they were pretty. They discouraged people who were hippie children like me. So I don't know. I felt maybe that I didn't have the mathematic aptitude for science.
Wait. They discouraged people who were hippie children?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there was sort of
What year are we talking?
Well, when I was, I guess, between 12 and 15.
So you were like, this was the late 80s.
Yeah, but I still don't know if I have the aptitude for real scientific work, or at least not the diligence, but I'm certainly a fan.
You definitely are a fan.
Yeah.
I can tell you're a fan. So, you think deeply, you wonder about the state of the world like many of us do.
I try.
The future of humanity, from where you sit.
Yeah.
Okay, on Twitter, everywhere, wherever you look. What do you think are the biggest issues?
Yeah, well, I think we've all been really concerned recently, and I mean, everyone that I know, at least, with the state of the world. I mean, politically, and, environmentally. And I remember growing up, and you've mentioned this before, the movie 2001, it seemed like we might at least be, taking trips to the moon and living in some sort of utopic, futuristic society. When I was young, there was a kind of optimism about the future. And I've noticed in the last 10 years that kind of inherent optimism has kind of been replaced by a real pessimism and negativity about, the potential for humans to survive at all. So, and I think that it's concerning because, people tell me, oh, well, there's always been people worried about Armageddon throughout any period of history, but it's the first time I've noticed that scientists sort of unanimously talk about the Anthropocene and the human-caused extinction epoch as something we just sort of have to accept, which in essence means that we're bringing about our own demise, and learning to live in today's world means accepting that demise as a given.
Well, I don't know that I'm hearing scientists say this, but it's interesting that you think you're hearing them say that we have to accept it. I think the role that scientists are playing is to illuminate the facts that...
No, of course, I agree with you, but the term Anthropocene means human-caused extinction epoch, and so if that's real, which essentially I feel...
Means it's an epic...
Does it mean that that's a foregone conclusion, or does it mean that we have that potential? Because I think the Anthropocene age that we live in shows that we're on the precipice, that we can definitely bring about our own demise, but that it's up to us whether or not that happens.
Well, but hold it. I don't think it means. I don't think it means. The term means that we are going to bring about our own demise. The way it just means that we are in a period of geological history now where humans are an effect. Global effect.
An effect, right.
Yeah, a major effect.
But
it's not, When
you say, Carolyn, that all of those effects are pretty bad, and that's why the assumption is we're going to bring about our own demise.
Well,
but also, aren't the epochs distinguished by extinctions?
Not all of them. I don't think the boundaries are all that way.
No. I think basically...
Some of them have been.
But I think
certainly
it's more,
like one species becomes more dominant after that. Isn't that true?
I forget. Maybe you know more about this than I do, but I'm the
comedian. Please do not look at me.
Yeah, well, either way, I'm not saying that everyone agrees about what the Anthropocene is. But I just mean that I'm hearing more and more legitimized scientists say that, humans aren't going to make it.
You know why? Because we are facing absolutely out of control, unprecedented problems.
Right.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be depressed that you're not going to, have the job you want by the time you die, or, any number of things we all get depressed about. But when you start being depressed, as I am, and I think there's a word for it, I'm sorry, I don't know, when you're actually depressed about the state of the world and not about, your lover leaving you.
Yeah.
And it's not a neuroses.
Right.
To think that, I thought like 2001 was horrible because you just wouldn't think a building like that buildings would have planes flying into them and they would go away.
Right.
You live in New York, right?
Yeah, I was
New York skyline changed like that.
Yeah.
Suddenly, things are not immutable.
Sure, but in my mother's generation, that happened to Tokyo. And so it's arguable that the world has... always had challenges through every generation. But the question is there something distinctly different now? And I think...
Yes, it's environmental change that is going to bring about all sorts of bad things, including geopolitical instability.
Exactly. But I've heard a lot of people say that it's not... The environmental change is going to be nothing compared to just simply making... most jobs obsolete through automation and robotics.
Wow, now that's a very interesting point, because when you look at the future of just the global workforce, there are a lot of people now calling for just universal pay. Where you just pay people to be, so that as a means of getting rid of poverty, because we're going to have a huge increase in the amount of poverty globally because of automation.
It's hard to anticipate what's going to happen, but even when I go to the airport now and they force you to use the robotic kiosk, I remember the woman was like, "You got to go use it." She was kind of rude to me, and I was like, "Well, wouldn't you prefer you helped me? Because these robots are displacing hundreds of people employed in your in your
buy it?
field."
You're one of them, lady.
Yeah, and I I was like, why are you so happy about, promoting the use of these robots that are replacing you? And she didn't even know what I was talking about. But I do find it ironic, that these kinds of automation are being sort of, forced upon us when we do have a choice. We can still employ people to, work at the airport. But, so I think that's just the beginning of it. But who knows how many jobs could be misplaced by automation. And the potential for a division between the rich and the poor is so great. I mean, we think it's bad now, but it could be much worse in 100 years. So, I mean, that worries me almost as much as the Anthropocene.
There are a lot of worrisome things. Maybe we should go to Cosmic Queries and see what they've got in store for us. Maybe they've...
See what other dark tales that we can glean from the internet.
But I will recommend that book by Roy Scranton called Learning to Die in the Anthropocene, because ultimately he does have a sort of Zen view of how we have to be motivated to have families and, be ambitious and work and be productive, in a sort of Zen sense, and just live in the moment and be happy to, exist despite, the potential for a meteorite impact in 100 years or something, So I do think it's a good book, but it did make me a little nervous. But I will say that it's beautifully written.
Okay.
Awesome.
We'll note it.
Well, we have queries from all over the internet, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or you name it, where people have written their questions to you guys on all of these things that we just talked about and more. So why don't we take our first one, which is from Patreon, a Patreon patron. And for those of you who don't know, if you support us on Patreon financially, we give you precedent. Basically, you have bribed us into reading one of your questions. And we don't mind. We'll admit that. So this is from Nick Sazafransky, okay? Nick, I hope I got it right, all right?
Close, yeah, I'm sure
Nick Sazafransky says this. With the Earth adding leap days to the calendar every 4 years, and Carolyn, this is probably more you than...
Oh, I'm worried already.
Are you ready? Are we as human beings moving our perception of the seasons backwards? Or is the hotter temperatures later in the year due to climate change?
Okay, so that's a non sequitur.
Okay, thank you, because I thought maybe, and listen, Nick, by no means am I going to disparage your question, but the two really aren't related, right?
It's pretty interesting, though. It's making me think.
Well, yeah, but, okay, so, yeah, I don't even know where to go with that. Okay.
Well,
leap seconds being added is just a way to bring about some kind of accounting of time.
Caesar was the first one to do it. Didn't he invent the leap year?
You always ask me these questions.
Yeah, well, I'll say that it's true.
I know, okay, just assert that it's true.
He invented the modern calendar.
Yeah, okay.
He did.
Yeah. You know who knows a lot about this is Neil. He loves the whole... loves the calendar.
You know what's very interesting in terms of the calendar is that you can memorize which months have less than 31 days. If you start with January as F on a piano keyboard, and then the sharps, F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp are the less than 31 day months, and it actually corresponds all the way up. And all the 12 notes correspond exactly to the numbers of days in each month.
Oh my God!
That's pretty cool.
That's cool. Weird.
I like it.
Okay, but starting with F. F is January?
Yes, F would be January.
I am going to learn to read music just so I can put that to work in my life.
And then C would be December.
I like, 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All
That's
the rest
harder
of 31.
to remember for me as a musician because the piano keyboard's in my head.
All right.
But it's interesting that it corresponds. I mean, I think this is an interesting segue to the intersection between art and science because, I mean, the diatonic scale was started by Pythagoras.
I told you, we wouldn't have any trouble with this guy.
No, but it's interesting because also there's 7 days of the week, and Monday is Moon Day, Tuesday, lundi, mardi, Mars Day is Tuesday, Mercredi is Wednesday.
That's Mercury.
Jeudi is Jupiter, right? So they're named after the spheres, and as you know, the diatonic scale was also related to the music of the spheres because in those days they believed that the harmony of the ratios that they found in the octaves, which is, he plucked a string, added a weight, and doubled it, and then a third, was actually the ratios of fifths and thirds that are the diatonic scale. Right. And he thought that corresponded directly, well, not just Pythagoras, but they all did, to the music of the spheres, which was a sort of planetary symphony that was the music of God or something. But I find that to be interesting in that you find these same ratios, at least, and Fibonacci can be found in the music scale as well.
Are you talking about the golden mean, which I think is the coolest thing? The Greeks used the golden mean.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So there are these sort of mathematical connections between music and math. And, I actually, this morning I was trying to think about the topic of, what is the influence of science on art? And I was actually trying to figure out, well, when actually was the separation of science and art? Because I think early on, if you think about, Babylonians, Egyptians, even Greeks, art and science were totally intertwined, and I think it was probably
Is that right?
Yeah, of course. Right? Yeah, of course, because mathematicians were musicians, and music was made by a mathematician, and the people that built the pyramids were craftsmen. I would call them scientists because they were masons. They understood, astronomy. Okay. And so what I mean is, I think even all the way up to the Renaissance, scientists were artists, basically. So I'm just trying to wonder, when did the separation happen? Because I think fundamentally...
It could have been when, I'm just going to take a guess, it could have been when scientists no longer were supported by a benefactor.
Yes.
But, you could apply for grant money from the government.
I was going to say this.
Maybe, but
the specialty.
We only have 2 minutes,
Wow, look at that, man. We really got off on it, didn't we?
We did.
Wow.
Sorry to be the wet blanket, but do we need to ask? Sorry, we need to ask.
All right, let's get to another question. But that was great.
That was fascinating.
Well, I did want to tell you one quote. You can edit this out, but
No.
James Sylvester, he was the Oxford scientist who taught Florence Nightingale, who basically invented modern nursing, and he said that music is the mathematics of sense, and math is the music of reason.
Hold it. Say it again. Music is the mathematics of sense.
Yes, and mathematics is the music of reason.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Interesting.
Very nice.
Yeah, well, I find that to be true.
Who said that?
His name is James Sylvester. He was the Oxford scientist who was the tutor for Florence Nightingale, who invented modern nursing in the Victorian era.
There's a beautiful reciprocity there that works wonderfully. I like that. All right, we're almost out of time, so I'm gonna get one.
1 minute and
we got 1 minute, so I'm gonna get one that Carolyn, that maybe you can knock out for us in a minute.
Let's hope.
Okay, here we go. Rodney A. Morrison Jr. from Facebook wants to know this. Hey, so Carolyn, what in the world is at Saturn's core? Could it be some kind of dense liquid that's not molten, or is it just boring old rocky material? Thanks a lot.
It's boring old rocky material.
Is it
Saturn
really?
has a boring old rocky core. And then it's got a thick outer layer where you go from atmosphere to ionized hydrogen, helium, and then you get into metallic hydrogen, and then you go into the core.
You go into the core.
Yeah, it's
plasma
pretty.
Is ionized hydrogen just plasma?
Yeah, you're too damn smart.
Well, at what point will the...
Yeah, I don't understand why you didn't become a scientist.
But at one
Okay,
point...
wait a minute. Stop right here. We have to take a short break, but we'll be back shortly talking more science here on Star Talk All Stars.
And cheap beer bottles floating out to sea. We placed our bets about his fate, standing over Schrodinger's grave. Pavlov's dog chased the cat, his heart bled like a red Rorschach.
You know that we have great advertisers that support the show and keep it free for you. One of the reasons why advertisers love Star Talk All Stars is that they know the show has an amazing listenership. So, right now, we have a survey that I'd like you to take and help us learn more about our audience. That would be you. So just go to podsurvey.com/allstars. The survey will only take about 5 minutes. We're going to ask you some questions about yourself and what you like to buy. It's completely anonymous. Your answers will help us find advertisers that are matched to you as well as your interests and that are a fit for the show. So when you're finished, you can enter a monthly drawing to win a $100 Amazon gift card. That's not so bad, right? And even if you've taken a podcast listener survey before, I really need you to go ahead and help us with this one and support the show. Don't forget that you have a chance to win a $100 gift card. Once again, that is podsurvey.com/allstars. podsurvey.com/allstars. Thanks for helping us find the best advertisers so that we can keep the show free.
This is Star Talk.
Now you know too much. Only one choice to leave for us. Who you think they'll believe? Us or you?
Welcome back to Star Talk All-Stars. I am your host for today, Carolyn Porco, and we have the always humorous Chuck Nice here today. Thank you.
Good to be here.
As well as our
Less humorous.
Our in-studio guest who regards himself as less humorous, but I don't. Science groupie and musician Sean Lennon. So thank you both for
Howdy.
being here.
And we're
Howdy.
finding out that Sean is extremely science literate, like to
That's not exaggerating.
And well-informed. Well-informed,
Super
man.
cool, man.
Just Googling under the table.
Okay, well,
Wouldn't that be hilarious, though, if you had like a little phone right here?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, really? I think it was actually 13 atoms in aluminum.
so we were talking about, the Anthropocene and all the awful things that are happening, climate change and
All the good stuff.
great inequities, all the things that really are concerning people today. And they come with a bigger punch than usual because they really seem like catastrophic, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're
Backed
on
up
an
by
exponential curve to the end. So this is something that Sean and I talked about over email, and even when I went to see you, I went to see his show,
It was
Boston.
very nice of you to come to that.
Boston, it was a rockin' show. I hadn't been to a concert in God knows how long.
You got to play
Nice.
my guitar.
I have a picture of me with his sparkly green guitar, and I thought, well, for a moment there, I was infinitely cool.
Carolyn Porco, rock
star.
god.
Goddess, I think.
I don't believe in terms for that.
That's gender
Okay.
specific.
God is
Sorry,
God,
I didn't mean to be sexist.
So anyway, we're thinking of, I think about how horrible our stewardship of the planet has been, how we have behaved collectively with no regard to animals and animal life, as if they are there for us or against us, depending on, what we deem important. And even if we can find optimism in technological achievements and progress that comes from that, I wonder, our fundamental nature seems to be angel and devil together in the same package. And it seems to be to our evolutionary advantage to kill or at least regard with great suspicion everything that is alien to us and to protect our own. Will we ever be able to get beyond this? This is a serious question. We have both. Both are the reason why we have become so successful. Right? We kill things that let our genetic material
Advance into the future.
advance into the future. Is that going to be the thing that kills us? How can we be optimistic?
There's so many examples in nature of sustainable systems, though. That's the thing. So I feel like we could easily benefit from natural resources without destroying them. Because there are a lot of examples in nature where it's a symbiotic relationship where,
Well, the
bacteria
symbiosis
are happy to, live in our gut.
Right,
And
without them, we would die.
We're happy to give them ice cream, you know what I mean? So I feel like it's possible to have a sustainable society. But what I really want to ask you is, how do you feel about the potential of, this is the kind of stuff that I'm sure your audience likes to hear about anyway. Everyone's talking about colonizing Mars, like Elon Musk is talking about getting there. If we can't even terraform Arizona, what are the chances of us terraforming a planet that has no magnetic field, no continental drift? No protection from, the radiation of the sun, and we can't even, terraform Arizona. So I don't really see what the realistic, thinking is there.
This is how I view this whole topic. First of all, I'm a big fan of human exploration, that is, as opposed to robotic. I'm a big fan of both. I think they go hand in hand. There's a place for both.
Or like
glove to glove.
Glove, yeah, exactly.
Human exploration for, the practical reasons. Like it would take a human, an instant to be walking around on the surface of Mars and identify a rock that was of interest. It would take a long time, longer, for a robot to do it, because the robot's got to be in touch with the ground, and maybe you could train them to recognize it. But, we've had, billions of years of evolution to work off of to get to where we are. We're pretty good at that. So that's good. But I also think human exploration, I'm digressing here, is important for the inspiration that it allows people. You know, seeing someone do something that is on the very edge of what is humanly possible.
Yeah.
But I don't think that people should be thinking we're going to take 7 billion people or 9 billion people and move them to Mars. That is not going to happen. The analog that I think is applicable here is one where we are going to set up the equivalent of scientific research stations on Antarctica. We've had for decades now a continuously inhabited research outpost on Antarctica, and valuable things are done there. And
Sure.
I think that's what we'll do in the solar system. But
that's a much more realistic view then. But I've read a lot of, books. Even Michio Kaku, when I was young, I read a book of his that was talking about this Russian scientist who has qualifications for phase 1 society, phase 2 society. And I think it was your friend Carl Sagan, who actually just made more distinct, smaller distinctions between the phases, but that essentially if you survive a nuclear age, then you get to another phase of a possible extinction threat. But then you can eventually build a geodesic dome or something, or a Dyson sphere around the sun, and you get all this energy, and then you can make wormholes and you can essentially populate the universe. I just feel like a lot of people use that kind of theoretical thinking to sort of justify the survival or the optimism that we might survive as a species if we actually populate the solar system or elsewhere. And I just feel like it's so unrealistic because we, as you said, we're not very good custodians of our own planet. So how could we possibly make a place as inhospitable as Mars ever?
Well, the antithesis of what you're saying, or the flip side, more than an antithesis, the flip side of that is perhaps that's how we are here. It is not really about us populating other places as in colonization, but in seeding other places the same way that we seed each other to send our DNA into the future. Yeah. That's why we have sex and we have kids.
Impregnate Mars.
Right, I just want to impregnate Mars is what I'm saying. I'm going to knock you up, Mars. Well, that's what's happening right now.
Well, I want to watch. I'll pay to see that.
He wants to watch.
I want to watch.
I'll pay to see that. I'll pay to see that.
Bow wow.
Yeah, totally. Mars is getting sexy. Maybe, yeah, interesting.
But yeah, you understand what I'm saying? So maybe it's not about colonization. Maybe it's the survival, the same way on a cellular level we survive because we send a single cell to a single cell, and then boom, that's how life is.
You're just saying this is the expression of the base need.
Exactly.
To
it's
survive.
an expression of a base need to survive.
But that's a good question, because I just read an article that said if humans will go extinct, or we actually face the extinction of life on the planet, do we have an obligation then to seed other exoplanets with earthbound DNA? Like, should we send rockets and do our own panspermia project to spread life if we're looking at our own extinction? Do we have a duty to do that, or is it bad to do that?
I don't know.
Violating the Prime Directive?
These are moral questions, but isn't it just an incredibly fascinating question to ponder?
Yeah.
It is.
Boy, you could spend an evening drinking a glass of wine in front of a fireplace thinking about all these things and have a really good time.
I think you said bottle of wine.
Should we do?
Yeah, let's get into another. Let's switch gears here. Because, you guys kept bringing up Twitter. So we have some questions where people want to talk about Twitter. And Kavan Kutai.
That's all right. Don't apologize. You gave it your best shot.
I could. I think these people are sending me fake names just so I can struggle. I swear.
That's right. Okay. People call me Seon every day. So
Seon?
Every day. I get Seon.
Seon.
I do.
Okay. So here's what Kavan wants to know. Social media has a representation for disseminating false and misleading information. But since people are also being exposed to the collective knowledge, wisdom, education, and expertise of other users, aren't they getting a more stimulating and meaningful experience than they would from just watching or reading news about by more traditional means? So, is that collective knowledge that is represented on a base like Twitter or Facebook, is that greater? Or is it more harmful in that you could have more people just believing wrong stuff?
Well, it's the yin and yang of everything.
But it's not
the older I've gotten, the more I realize just about everything you can think of has a good side and a bad side. To me, the good side of Twitter is that first of all, you are accessing the knowledge of lots of people that you wouldn't have otherwise have access to. I mean, it's out there.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've sent things out on Twitter and I realize, oh my God, that's wrong. I'm sorry, I just hit the send button. 3 seconds later, someone's back and saying, that's not right. You know, I've got smart people following me. That's great. It's also great that it bypasses the what's the word here? The guardians of the news.
Yeah.
The standard.
I see what you're saying. The standard-bearer gatekeepers.
Yeah.
The gatekeepers. I mean, aren't we finding that the regular news media are just...
It's all sensational. It's tabloid now.
It's tabloid.
really sad.
They are doing it for profits.
Right.
They're not doing it to convey accurate information. This whole business of setting up a false equivalence between someone who's knowledgeable, someone who doesn't know jack,
Right.
but just for the sake of making it look like they're having a reasonable discussion.
It
they do
looks
that.
like it's an intellectual tennis match, and it's not.
So I like that about social media a lot. But the downside is that you're also accessing people who have no self-control and they don't really know how to engage in logical, reasoned discussion. And they think the purpose of Twitter is just to let it all hang out, meaning their anger, you know, even if it's misdirected.
Well, I've been contemplating the ugliness of Twitter, you know, a lot recently because I'm pretty active on Twitter. And, you know, I think at first my criticisms were of the medium of Twitter. And then I started to realize that really it's more of a cross-section of people. And it's my issues have to do with us, with people. I think it's just people expressing what they think. And I think normally we wouldn't be exposed to such a cross-section of society. But, you know, Twitter is just us and what we see on
But
Twitter.
it's depressing how many people they don't know how to engage. They don't know that you could criticize something they've said.
Right.
Yeah.
And not criticize them.
Absolutely.
They take it personally. And
But that's a lack of critical thought right there.
It is a lack of...
It's a lack of critical thought when somebody takes a disagreement as a personal attack, you know, and so many people do that on Twitter.
Yeah, but so many people just do that.
Period.
And that's, you know, I really do think people need to be trained. They need to be trained in critical thought. They need to be trained. People need to be told how to vote. I don't even think people know how to vote.
No ad hominem, no straw man arguments. I mean, you know, it's easy to, I mean, these, you know, if you actually spend a little time, you can learn how to debate, you know, with civility. But I think, again, the ugliness of Twitter is just the ugliness of people, and the beauty of Twitter is the beauty of people. So, but I would say the biggest problem to me with social media, since that's, you know, the topic, is that I think a generation of kids are learning how to represent themselves through a two-dimensional Facebook page very well, but they're not learning how to represent themselves to real physical human beings in a relationship with them in a room and in their lives. And I think
totally different thing, isn't it?
Different, Sean, I totally disagree with you.
Yeah,
no, I'm
exactly,
joking.
exactly. But those are different
But you're
skills. And, you know, in fact, you can get a very good job being a master of social media these days. You know,
Yes, I know that.
So that's a skill in itself.
So do you think that at some point in time in the future that we'll actually have training for people? Because when you think about it,
Well,
we're
we've had
still in
that.
the nascent stages of social media.
It's not just
If you
training
take a
for
logic
social
and rhetoric
media.
class at any university, you're going to learn about ad hominem attacks and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's been a part of
I think it needs to
education
be almost
forever.
like vocational. You do it. You teach people how to interact with other human beings, and I just don't think we are given enough of that.
Well, kind
and
of
I think it
civility's
helps.
out of fashion, though. That's the thing.
Well, we were saying that, you know, there's no empathy on Twitter. It's not cool to be compassionate. Yes.
Absolutely. All right, here we go. Josefa Larry from Facebook. Yeah,
an easy one.
Yeah, it was an easy one, right? Okay. Art has evolved through time, incorporating scientific advancements at every step. So maybe in the future, is it possible that animations or visual effects that we see now may be considered a form of primitive, inspiring art?
Oh, of course.
So,
Yeah,
you think
that's
so?
kind of like a no-brainer. I think so.
Well, I think
Yeah.
they're more talking about like the work that you do with your visual imaging. Do you look at that as an art form as well?
Oh, I do.
Do you understand?
I think that was the one thing I did as the leader of the imaging team. You know, I'll speak for myself. I didn't want to do what other people who came before me had done. Mm-hmm. You know, with the images that we were collecting, I wanted to do something different, just to kind of add my mark. And I was always very disappointed. Oh, we have to go.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. Finish your point. No,
Okay.
seriously.
I was always very disappointed with the way, for example, not to criticize because the Voyager project was like the best thing that ever happened to me and I think ever happened to anybody. But I just thought they didn't treat the images as well as they should have. They didn't present them as beautifully as they could have. It was all, get the science out. We're just making pictures for the public because we got it. We have a press conference coming up and we have to do it.
Sure. No, that's fascinating. Okay.
I want this to be the mechanism that takes the public along for the ride.
That's awesome.
So we spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of time thinking about how to present the pictures, how to get the colors right, and so on.
Self-portrait through the rings of Saturn was such a beautiful classic. My mom is a big fan of that photo.
I know, and I loved it. Yoko Ono actually complimented The Day the Earth Smiled. Like, how cool is that?
That is amazing. I mean, that's
like a
great that
performance
you brought artistic integrity to the science, thereby increasing the value of the science.
And engaging the public.
That's fantastic.
Well, yeah, thank you. I'm very proud of that. So I guess we are going to have to take a short break, but don't go too far. We'll be right back here on Star Talk All Stars.
Turn off your phone now. Boomerang baby, turn back home now. Boomerang baby, turn off your phone now. Boomerang baby.
Did you know that Star Talk has an online store? That's right. Our shelves are bursting with copies of our new National Geographic book, Star Talk, everything you need to know about space travel, sci-fi, the human race, the universe, and beyond, along with fan-designed shirts, official Star Talk and Star Talk All-Star mugs, totes, and hats. Grab our super bundle and walk around in style wearing your Star Talk shirt and carrying your book in your Star Talk tote. Check out our books, wearables, and more by clicking on Shop at StarTalkRadio.net and have your Star Talk favorites shipped right to your door. Unless, of course, I'm your favorite, in which case I will not be shipped, but I will come by and say hi.
This is Star Talk.
Lost in the Milky Way, the very first light wave, exploring holes in space like a glowworm in the grave.
Hello, and we are back with Star Talk All Stars. I'm Carolyn Porco, your all-star host, with Chuck Nice, my comedic co-host.
That's right.
Thank you for being here, Chuck. And joining us in person is musician and total science groupie Sean Lennon.
Yes.
There he is.
Badass groupie.
That's the most important part.
That's right.
Badass groupie. Yes. So where do we go from here? Well, one topic we haven't discussed, I feel honor-bound and actually interested to get to this topic. I just caught you and Les Claypool and the gang at the House of Blues in Boston just a couple of weeks ago. It was great.
Thank you.
I loved it. I hadn't been to a concert in a long time. I forgot how great live music is. It was wonderful.
It's not always that great.
And he actually dedicated a song to me. I just felt so thrilled.
Yeah, Astronomy Domine.
Whoa.
Sid Barrett, Pink Floyd
Pink
song.
Floyd, and I got to take a picture with his sparkly green guitar, so I got a moment of like feeling what a rock star is like.
Because the lyrics are Jupiter and Saturn, Oberon, Miranda, and Titania.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow, and you know what all those are.
Well, you can tell me.
No, we'll go there later. So I want to know, is there something in particular that you feel you like to convey with your music? You write your own, and, just go there. Do you have plans to take it in a different direction? How has it evolved over the years? It's all about you as a musician, and,
Yeah, interesting. I mean...
And one thing I will ask, I don't want to dwell on this. I promised we wouldn't dwell on things like this. But do you feel almost, is it like a calling because of your heritage, your parents and so on? You felt a calling to be a musician? Did you feel almost everyone's expecting me to do that, so that's what I'll do? How did that come about?
Well, I mean, there were several phases to it. The truth is I was playing music before I was conscious of what a career was or even what the public was. I mean, my introduction to the public kind of came when my dad was murdered because there was just crowds of people outside of the house. And
and suddenly, oh my God.
Yeah,
there's
and
a
they were
public out
singing
there.
Give Peace a Chance every day. I mean, it was for actually years they'd always come back on the anniversary and stuff. So I think my introduction to him being a public person was through that. And I remember learning to play his songs on the piano when I was very young.
Very young.
Kind of as a way of, 5, 6.
5,
yeah.
wow.
Kind of as a way of feeling like I was, getting closer to him, especially after he'd passed away. It was a way of me sort of communing with him or getting a piece of him back, learning music.
Sure, I can
So by
see
the
that.
time it came to think about what is your career, I'd already kind of been doing music, and that's why I left school, was to pursue music, because it started taking over my life. So it was never really a choice for me. I was kind of thrust into it for personal reasons.
But I think
That's a calling of sorts.
I was going to say, I don't think it's a choice for any musician. What you just described, I've heard so many musicians describe the same thing. My brother is a musician, and he went from being a fund manager, okay, and doing that for a while, and then just going, I can't take it anymore. I have to go do this. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's that same thing where it's like it's at first it feels like it's thrust upon you, but at the same time you can't live without it.
Well, yeah, it wasn't until I was 19 or 20 that I started realizing there would be a public reaction to whether I should or shouldn't have played music in the first place. And, it's been a learning process since then. But I mean, most of what I've learned is that I just have to kind of not think so much about how people feel about me being a musician, and just focus on, the work.
I imagine you have the canonical burden of a child of a very famous person, right? You're always going to be compared. That must be like so painful and so irritating.
And yet you're so delightful.
No, but I mean,
And handsome.
serious.
and handsome.
Can I tell? Okay, you said that. Can I tell you a little story?
Sure.
Can I tell you a little story? Okay,
No,
this
I'm not
is
so sure. I don't know. Can you?
this is not to embarrass you, but I'm walking to this studio, right? Because I'm staying only on 25th Street. I decided to walk in the heat, and I passed two young girls. They look like they're teenagers or 20 years old, and I hear them talking about you.
Really?
They're talking about you, and one says, I kind of like Sean Lennon. Yeah, I think he's really cute.
Oh, that's nice.
Isn't
you
that-
met the two girls in all of America. I can feel that.
No, I don't think so. Anyway, so go
That's
ahead.
very cool, though. Yeah. Well, listen, speaking of that, let's get to a cosmic query about kind of like art and science, since you kind of embody both. And this is from Chris Emmett. And he says, how does art inspire scientists to think outside of the box and vice versa? So for you, how does art push your boundaries, your perspectives further out? And for you, how does science push your artistic boundaries? I know you did, what was it? The Monolith of the Phobos, right?
Yeah, Monolith of Phobos is our record title.
Yeah. So, clearly there's an association there for both of you. So,
yeah, I mean,
can you speak to that?
for me, fundamentally, music is mass. I mean, there's basically X, Y, Z axis of the time in which the note is placed, the pitch of the note, and then the volume of that note. I mean, timbre could be arguably a fourth axis, but I mean, it's very mathematical. It's easy to chart music on a graph. And so, I think any musician who stops to think about it would really, think of melody as a kind of audio geometry. So I mean, it is math, and most of the people that I know who are very mathematically minded are huge music nerds. My friend Eric Weinstein, who's a famous mathematician, physicist, economist, all he ever wants to talk to me about is like whether Robert Johnson is cooler than Roy Harper or something.
Well, for me, you asked me this question. I know that I'll just say that I love space art. I love space art. I love what space artists do, the scenes that they create. You
need them at NASA, don't you? Because often you have to visualize illustrations that I notice when you can't take a picture of an exoplanet, but NASA releases these sort of illustrated what if we're sitting on, Titan or something.
Right. Yes. But I'm talking about the genuine space artists who just do it for a living. And this is another one of those things I did that, I'm very happy I did. I don't think anybody was doing it before I did. But on our Cyclops website that we set up for the public, that is, me and the Cassini imaging team, There's a special section there that is devoted to space artists. You know, just what the scenes they've depicted of Saturn, or we actually go beyond Saturn, but the rings and Titan. And I love looking at those, and I love looking at, you know, just what the scenes on exoplanets, because that's a way to be there. You know, these
There's
people.
a beautiful painting your friend did of the rings of Saturn, the view of looking at those irregularities that are like, how high are they?
Oh, the fabulous. Okay, wonderful that you brought that up,
Yeah.
because we found in the rings, this incredible thing. I mean, the rings are only 30 feet thick.
Okay.
Right?
But
That's
they're
like,
so wide, they're bigger than the Earth, like
No,
much bigger, right? I mean,
they would fit in from end to end between the Earth and the Moon.
yeah,
Wow.
So
exactly.
I love, and then we found on the edge of the B ring, and we also
That's
found
thin.
a similar thing on the edge of a gap in the outer A ring. We found these mountainous waves of rubble that extend 2 and 3 miles high.
Because of the resonance with the moons, right?
Yeah, it's a little complicated. In one case, a moon is nearby, and it actually, because it's on an inclined orbit, it draws the particles out of the plane.
Right.
It's not complicated. It's just like pushing a kid on a swing, and every time you push
That's
him, it goes farther.
Right, okay, except that what's complicated is because of that pushing on the swing, the orbits of the particles become eccentric, and that means in certain regions of the orbit they get squeezed together, and that has to push them higher.
Right.
But on the outer edge of the B ring, these things are, these rubble piles, these rubble mountains are very irregular looking, but they're high. So imagine this, you've got a sheet of material that's 30 feet thick, something coming out that's miles high, and I've often said in public,
And how fast are you spinning? Like 40,000 miles an hour?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and so you say you'd like to take a craft there one day, but are you just being hyperbolic? Because, I mean, that sounds like a very dangerous place to drive a
I don't care. This is just like all in my mind's eye. I'm in
Would
a
it ever be
shuttlecraft.
possible to actually have a shuttlecraft that close to these spinning debris rings?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that sounds
you
like some
could- you
serious
could be-
extreme sports to me.
You could be over the rings, you know, and if you're really close to the rings would look like they extend to infinity to you effectively.
Sure.
Because you're so low. And imagine you're flying, and then you come across a wall of rubble that's 2 or 3 miles high. So the artist who did this, I think, had heard me say that, and he wanted to paint it. So we went back and forth as to what it should look like. And it's
You're in a Chevy Nova. No, I'm kidding.
no.
Great name for the car, though, by the way.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Nova.
so
we're not sponsored by Chevy.
I love the connection between art and
Art and
science.
science.
I think they're two they're just like two products of the human soul and mind. So
I mean,
lightning
Da
round.
Vinci's a perfect example of someone who could be a scientist and an artist kind of at the same time. The confluence of engineering and art in his brain was
And
amazing.
it's not
It was a
it's
harmony.
not only that, it's I think they derive from the same wellspring. You know, the same kind of deep soul that loves to, you know, wants to make, this is how it is for me, wants to make a connection with the natural world. I mean, a deep, like almost high priestess kind of connection.
Yeah.
And science is the only way to do it, and music is, shouldn't say the only, but music is another.
Right.
Well, I think that's why music is beautiful, because we recognize harmonies, which are, you know, harmonic geometries that are, you know, the same reason that numbers describing the universe can have their own beauty to them. And I think it's exactly the same thing.
Absolutely. All right, speaking of beauties, let's get to the rest of our questions. We're going to move to a lightning round right now.
Okay, I
As
hope
many
I do
questions
this right.
in as possible in the short period of time remaining, okay?
Make 'em good.
So here we go. Let's make them good. Here we go. John Allen would like to know this. Do you think that social media spreads more misinformation than information is a net gain or loss for our understanding of science?
It's impossible to measure. Come on. It's either and, not either or.
Ooh, both and.
Good,
not
I like that.
either
I was
or.
going to say the same thing. It's going to be a wash.
It's a wash. There you go. Boom. Let's go to Stephen B., who comes to us from Twitter, who says this. Hi, Carolyn. What would be the social and religious impacts of the discovery of a more advanced alien civilization?
Oh, my God. Catastrophic. I think.
It would confirm all of religion. No, I'm kidding. It wouldn't. I don't think it would.
It would world peace.
Why do they have to be more evolved than us? I mean, just even equals or early hominids.
No, but I just like I think the person is getting to the issue. Like, would we be so freaked out we'd run for cover? Right?
Yeah.
It would be great. I hope I live to see it.
Great answer.
Amen.
There you go. This is Saladamian from Instagram would like to know this. Do you think that social medias are getting or making people dumb?
Oh, what?
What?
What is it?
All right, here we go. This one is from Hubert. Oh, I am not even trying. I'm not trying. I'm sorry.
Just Hubert.
Humbert Togafrost, whatever. He wants to know this. Do you consider cheating to use technology to create arts? This is for both of you. Is technology cheating?
No, is a paintbrush cheating? No.
I don't know. I'm passing.
A guitar's technology, obviously that's not
No,
cheating.
but I mean to have no for human inspirational input into it.
You mean like the Deep Dream bot that made all those weird surrealist Google images? I mean, even Dreambot was programmed by people, so then,
Okay.
we have yet to have art created by no
We
one.
have to wrap it up. We've got only 9 seconds left. Thank you to all our wonderful listeners for all those great questions. You can get more Star Talk by following us on Twitter at Star Talk Radio. Chuck, where can the people get more of you?
My living room. I'll be there this afternoon. Please come by. Come by. No, I'm on Twitter at Chuck Nice Comic, and that's where I interact with most people.
Okay, and Sean, I know you are at Sean Ono Lennon because that's where you and I met up.
Yep, that's
one of the really good things about Twitter for me. And you can find me at Carolyn Porco, all one word.
My record company is ChimeraMusic.com, if you're interested in music. And we're about to make another record, so yeah, check us out.
Another record, great. Okay, looking forward to that. So thank you to Chuck Nice for co-hosting with me tonight.
A pleasure.
Yes, it's been great. And to our special guest, Sean Lennon,
Thank you.
for geeking out with us. I am your host, Carolyn Porco. Until next time.